Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ مُبِينٌ. Indeed, he is to you a clear enemy. Now today's verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes as an explanation. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the statement that he is indeed to you a clear enemy. So someone may ask, why is he a clear enemy? How is he a clear enemy? The statement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough. If Allah says, this thing is harmful for you, or this person is an enemy to you, O believers, his statement is enough because he always speaks the truth. He's all wise, he's all knowledgeable. It's enough that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us this. But look at the wisdom, the mercy, the care, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not simply leaving it at that. He's not just saying that shaitan is an enemy unto you. And that's it. He's a clear enemy. He didn't leave it at that. Because people may ask, okay, why is he a clear, how is he a clear enemy? Why is he so dangerous? Why should we stay away from him? Why should we be so careful about him? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings this ayah as an explanation of the statement that he is a clear and open enemy. So he is an enemy. Why? Because he only orders you to evil, su, and fahsha. And that he commands you to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that which you do not know. Three things are mentioned here. First is su, evil, fahsha, roughly translated as immorality or transgression. And that you say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that which you do not know. So three things he does, which is an explanation of why you should stay away from shaitan, why you should guard yourself from shaitan, why you should not follow his footsteps. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the previous verse, do not follow in the footsteps of shaitan. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by providing some details. When we're warned about something, if we're not given any explanation or reason or details, often we don't take it seriously. Smoking is bad for you. If someone just said that, kept on saying this, not many people would give up. But when they show you how it's bad for you, when they show you the inside of your lungs and how it affects your health and how it causes cancer, etc., etc., when all the harms are shown, then it has a bigger impact. It has a greater effect. Then people start to take notice. People start to act. People start to believe in it, if you like. They start to take it more seriously. So similarly with many things, yes, and this is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not coming from the NHS or the health authorities. This is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is saying this is an open enemy. But still, Allah is not relying on the fact that Allah is saying it and you will just listen. Out of His mercy, out of His love, out of His care, that He wants us to succeed, that He wants us to be protected. He's giving us now explanation. Why shaitan is an enemy, why we should stay away from him, why is he so dangerous. So the first thing that shaitan does is he commands you to su, evil. Su is anything that is evil, that is against the Sharia, that is a sin, that is from the big sins which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enumerated in the Qur'an or through the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But those things that are evil and bring harm, su are those things that are evil and they're associated with some harm. It brings a harm to you as an individual or to others. You bring harm to others through these actions. So this is the first thing that shaitan commands. He wants us to harm ourselves. He wants us to harm others. And the harm we're talking about is not something small. It's not something temporary. The harm that shaitan will cause, that we're talking about here, is of this dunya and of the akhirah. and it has harms for individuals, and it has harms for society. Most of the su that shaitan commands people to do has harms for the individual as well as the society, and is harmful, detrimental, destructive for our lives in this dunya, but more importantly, for the akhirah, for the eternal life, for the next life. So this is the type of harm we're talking about. So the first thing shaitan does is commands you to do this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ. يَأْمُرُكُمْ means he commands you, like a king or a president or someone in authority, like a general who commands and the soldiers do. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this word, amr, ya'murukum, to rebuke the people who follow his commands, because we know shaitan has no power to command. Shaitan has no power to command. You don't have to listen. He cannot force you to do anything. You're not under his control. You are not under his authority. You're not under his domain. He has no authority, control whatsoever on human beings. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word command. إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ. Why? To rebuke those people who listen to shaitan. It's as though those who follow shaitan, those who listen to him, those who follow in his footsteps, it is as though they have no self-control. It is as though they have no willpower. It is as though they have been commanded and they can only simply implement the command. They can only simply obey. So they hear the command from shaitan and automatically they just follow, they just obey. This is, in this respect, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ, that he commands you to. It's a rebuke. It's like look at the pitiful situation of those people who follow shaitan. It's as though he's commanding them and they are simply, without any choice, just following. They have no willpower, they have no restraint, they have no self-control, they have no independent mind to think what is good, what is bad. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِسُوءٍ, that he commands you to do evil deeds. And these evil deeds are harmful for you, for others, and the harm results in the dunya and the akhirah. And what is the sharia? As I've mentioned before, the sharia, as the usuliyun have summarized it, is the attainment, the prevention of harm, is the prevention of harm, dar'ul mafsada or mafasid. It is the prevention of harmful things in this life and in the akhirah, short term and long term. This is sharia. Everything in sharia is aimed towards prevention of harm. And its opposite, it's aimed towards attainment of those things that benefit us, that are good for us, that are in our interest, in our welfare, in this dunya and in the akhirah, according to the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jalbul maslaha wa dar'ul mafsada. Jalbul maslaha wa dar'ul mafsada. Dar'ul mafsada, to leave mafsada. So this is the principle they say. They summarized attainment of benefit and prevention of harm is the summary of the whole sharia. Everything. Why is alcohol haram? Why is interest haram? Why is certain types of relationship haram? All of this is because of this, harm and benefit for dunya and akhirah. Yeah? So the sharia acts against this. Shaitan calls you to harm, to evil. And the sharia calls you to leave the evil. Prevents everything that can harm you. You follow sharia, you follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you follow the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, all your actions will be bringing you benefit, will be bringing you good things in this dunya and in the akhirah. You follow the shaitan, he will only call you إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرْكُمْ. He only calls you, he only commands you to evil, to harmful things. The second thing he commands you to is إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرْكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ. Fahsha means literally to transgress the limits, to transgress the bounds, right? So you have this line here. If I say don't go beyond this line here, you go beyond it. This is fahsha. You've gone beyond the limit. You've gone beyond the boundary, to go outside of the boundary. And this is what shaitan does. Shaitan commands you to go outside the boundaries. And fahsha, in the Arabs use it to mean, what does it mean to go out the boundaries or go beyond the limits? It means to do actions or to say things, to speech, to say things or to act beyond the known adab and norms of society. So what people deem as good, what people have as a boundary, what people have as limits, your actions and your speech goes beyond those limits. It goes against all good manners, etiquettes, norms of goodness in society. It goes beyond, anyone who sees your action and speech will say, this is shameful, this is immoral, this is something unacceptable, this is embarrassing. This is what fahsha is, generally. But often when used in the Qur'an, some of the scholars say it's more related to things like sexual misconduct, illegal sexual intercourse and all of these types of things, but not just limited to that, but it's often used for that. So anyway, it's shameful, indecent deeds and speech. That's what fahsha is. And originally it means to go beyond the boundaries, go beyond the limits. Again, the Sharia comes, and what does the Sharia do? It provides you boundaries. It provides you limits. It says, this is the red line, don't go beyond this. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that the halal is clear. Bayyin, the halal is clear, and the haram is also clear. And in between the halal and haram, there are some matters which are not so clear. They resemble the halal, sometimes they resemble the haram. They're not very clear in between. But he advises what? He said, these are like the boundaries. If you go too near the boundaries, too near the limits of halal to the edges, there's a fear you will fall into the haram. So the Sharia gives everybody in every sphere of our lives, individual, family, social, political, economic, it gives us boundaries, it gives us limits. Do not go beyond these limits. What shaitan does is he opens up these boundaries. He opens up these limits. And he makes them seem attractive. He whispers. He doesn't command, he can't command. He whispers, he tricks, he makes something ugly, something evil, something shameful, something indecent into something beautiful, something desirable, something attractive. He does the opposite. Every evil thing you can think of, every shameful deed, every indecent action or speech, shaitan works to make it attractive. Shaitan makes it, embellishes it, beautifies it, makes it seem desirable. This is the job of shaitan. But the Sharia gives us the clear limits, clear boundaries of what is halal, what is haram, what is ethical, what is not ethical, what is good, what is evil, what is right, what is wrong. This is what the Sharia does, and it acts against what shaitan does. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the third thing that He does is وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And He commands you to say عَلَى Allah is almost saying against Allah. He commands you to say against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that which you do not know. And here the Mufassirun said it's referring mainly to the Mushrikun and the Ahlul Kitab, where they practice some ibadat, some ritual worship, and say this is from Allah. So they do certain acts, they practice certain rituals of worship and say we have been commanded by God to do it in this way. Whether it's the mushrikun in the way they do the tawaf around the Kaaba, how they used to do it, or the way they slaughter and the oaths they make when they sacrifice animals, and all of the things which they attribute to God. They say we do this to please God. Or any other people of the book who say this is from God. This ruling, this hukum in my deen is from God. But actually it's not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So shaitan commands people to say, he whispers, he entices people to say something against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning to do and say this is from Allah. And actually it's not from Allah. Like you have no proof, you have no knowledge that this is from Allah, yet you say this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And mainly, as I mentioned, is referring to many of the ibadat, the ritual worship of the mushrikun. And we don't really call it ibadat, but it's their ritual worship. And some of the Ahlul Kitab who have changed the Sharia and then said this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So three things are mentioned here. The first two, they're all related to the deen. They're all related to the deen. But the first two are the major sins. They're the major sins. The first two, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ. Su' are those evil deeds that bring a lot of harm. Fahsha, indecency, immorality. So the scholar said in the first category, things like killing people unnecessarily, that causes bloodshed in the community. Drinking, intoxication, and then committing other crimes. These kinds of things will fall in the first thing. The second category, all the other things like zina and all the sexual relations, things related to sexual conduct. And lying also falls under fahsha. They say kadhib is also falls under fahsha. All the indecent, shameful deeds, these fall under these things. These things are between, yes, it's a sin against Allah, but the harm, the effects is on you as well as other people. It's on you as well as other people. The third one is even a greater thing. Because here you're harming yourself. The third one is what? Saying things against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or making something up and saying it's from Allah. That Allah commanded us to worship in this way. This act is harmful to yourself, to others who may follow it, but greater than that is you are acting in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Greater than that is you are playing the role of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are claiming that Allah, you are saying qala Allah. In hadith studies, in basic hadith, no one would, any good Muslim would not make up a lie against the Prophet ﷺ. Like any good Muslim would not say, Qala Rasulullah ﷺ. He would not fabricate this. But people have in the past, many people have fabricated hadith against the Prophet ﷺ. They said, Qala Rasulullah ﷺ. They gave the chain and said, Qala Rasul. And they fabricated it for their own interest. Right? But most Muslims wouldn't even do that against the Prophet ﷺ. But here, it's not against the Prophet ﷺ, it's against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are saying, وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. You are saying on behalf of Allah against Him, because it goes against, your claim goes against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He didn't say it. So here the sin is greater. You are saying that Allah commanded me to worship in this way. And shaitan loves to reach to that level. Because it reaches the level of, sometimes it reaches the level of shirk. Because you are making sharia, you are making up laws. It reaches, depending on your understanding and other things, it reaches the level of shirk. So shaitan aims in these three types of evil, fahsha, and speaking on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's not just the mushrikun, it's not just the Ahlul Kitab. Yes, this verse is about them. But what about the lesson for us? Are there not people who claim this is part of Islam? Are there not people who claim that this is from the deen? Of course, there are plenty of people amongst the Muslims who claim to have knowledge, who claim to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or claim to have some kind of isnad through their teachers to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or claim to have some kind of special knowledge, etc., etc. And they are doing all kinds of things against the Sharia, against Islam. They are doing all kinds of things that the Prophet ﷺ never said to do, never commanded, never ordered. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never commanded, never ordered to do these things. And people are saying and doing these things and then claiming this is part of Islam. This will get you to Jannah, this is ibadah. There's plenty of these things going on amongst the Muslims. That's why we as Muslims, the lesson we take is that we should verify what is actually from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is actually from, authentically from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And not just follow blindly claims, this is from Islam, this is a sunnah, we should pray in this way, we should do these acts. This is very dangerous. This is changing the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is signing off on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other thing, these verses should cause us to reflect that the age we live in, because we're talking about boundaries and limits, the age we live in and the societies we live in, by and large, we do not have fixed boundaries. We don't have fixed limits, especially moral limits, fixed ethical limits, fixed definitions of what is good, what is bad, what is harmful, what is beneficial. We simply don't have that anymore because of the historical reasons, because of where our societies are and their history, but mainly through that history where the sovereignty of God, the sovereignty that was given to God as the lawmaker or as the source of right and wrong, that was taken from God in that sense, metaphorically, and placed with man. So now, what is right and wrong is given to individuals to decide. What is right and wrong, what is evil, what is moral, what is immoral, right? What is beneficial for individuals, what is harmful. It's not decided by God in our societies. Who's it decided by? It's decided by man. It's decided by individuals or groups according to their limited knowledge, according to their desires, according to their restrictive capabilities. And this is the society we live in. And hence, there are no moral boundaries. There are no moral or ethical boundaries. Nothing solid, nothing fixed. Things keep on changing every 10 years, every 5 years. What was inconceivable 50 years ago, 40 years ago, is perfectly normal today. What was looked down upon, what was frowned upon, what was seen as evil, what was seen as immoral, what was seen as harmful, today is seen as perfectly normal. Why not? It's progressive, we should change with the times. There's nothing wrong with it. It's freedom of choice. We should be free to act and live our lives according to how we want. So this is the society we live in. We need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of those narratives and those pressures and those influences on our own communities, on our children, on our families, on our youth. And it's a heavy influence, it's a heavy pressure to live in that society where there are no boundaries, because that's the norm, the mainstream, that is the norm. There are no boundaries. There are no fixed limits of what is right. Everything is up for debate. What is right is what a group of people decide what is right. What is wrong is what a group of people decide what is wrong. Basically, what is right and wrong is decided by law, the legal system. That tells you what is right and wrong. There's nothing beyond that. Everything else is up for debate and question. So, if something is illegal, that is what is wrong. That is immoral. That is bad for individuals and society. If something is legal, it's allowed for you to do, there's nothing wrong with it. It's allowed, it's good, it's beneficial. That's how it's become, and it's totally directed by human beings, by individuals. But in Islam, and not just Islam, most traditions, most traditional religions, authentic religions, traditional societies draw their limits, their values. What is right and wrong is much more fixed. It's much more consistent. It's much more steady. It's much more foundational in their societies. And it's stemming from a divine source, the one who knows what is truly beneficial, what is truly harmful, the one who knows what is truly right, what is truly wrong for the human being, the one who created us and created the entire universe. He knows what is good, what is bad for us. So that is the contrast, and that's some of the clashes we're going to face and see. Our faith, our values, our judgment on what is beneficial for us as a society and what is harmful for us as a society, our judgments will be called to question. Our judgment or our values, our rules, our faith will be called into question. Why? Because it's different from what is acceptable in the wider society, which changes every few years. The moral norms changes every few years. So this is the thing we have to be able to understand. We have to be able to be articulate intellectually why we have this value system. What's the benefit of it? We have to be able to articulate this and to convince and pass on and teach and educate the next generation. Is very, very important, because this is the primary aim of Islam. The major goal, main aim of Islam is the formation of the moral human being. This is the major goal. This is the most important. All of the rules and regulations. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describe the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as? That you are upon a grand character. Khuluqin azim. This is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Khuluqin azim. Your behavior, your speech, your actions is azim. It's great. The ethical behavior and speech of the Prophet ﷺ is what is being praised here. His actions, him as a moral human being. And this Qur'an requires moral, upright human beings to carry this Qur'an, to follow, guide others with this, but to follow it themselves. And the aim of this Qur'an and Islam is the formation of an upright, moral human being. This is the primary aim. This is the primary goal. What do I mean by upright, moral human being? A human being that acts in accordance to the guidance of the Qur'an, guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all aspects of his life. Or tries their best. Obviously nobody's perfect. Tries their best, but it's a way of dealing with those things which take us away from having any fixed values or becoming moral human beings. Once you have no fixed values, once you have no ethical system, you have no ethical framework, you have no foundation, if everything is up for debate, what kind of human beings will that society produce? People will be always constantly in flux, drifting, without direction, without fixed views, worldviews. That's fractured individuals without any unity in thought, in values, in deciding what is right or wrong. That is the type of human being that we see. But Islam, its major aim is to produce this moral, upright human being for his own benefit, for the benefit of society and families in this dunya and the akhirah. That is the major aim of Islam. If you ask others, if you've got rid of God from the picture, how do you decide what is right and wrong? They will say, we use our intellect. We have common sense. We know what's right or wrong. But we know that has not worked. What is common sense today is not going to be common sense tomorrow, and was not common sense 50 years ago. It's constantly changing. We know that hasn't produced morality. It hasn't produced better ethics. So Islam's major goal is to produce this moral, upright human being who has values, who has good character, who knows what is right and wrong. And it's not changing every other day. But the way it does that is the purification which is needed. The intellect and rational mind is not enough to know right and wrong. Many people know things that are harmful, but people still go and do it. In their mind, rationally, logically, we know many things are harmful, but we still go and do it. People know smoking is harmful, they still go and smoke. People know all the data about alcohol abuse, drug abuse, they still go and do it. It's not enough just to know this is harmful, this is good. That's not enough. That mind can understand that. When it comes to implementing, it's not enough. It requires a sound heart to implement, because our actions come from and are directed by the heart. The heart needs to be pure. The heart needs to be purified. The heart needs to be sound. So Islam, everything we do in Islam, from salah to adhkar to Sawm, fasting which is coming up, Hajj, Umrah, all of these things in Islam, from the type of food we're allowed to eat, to the type of transaction, to our behavior, all of these are there to purify our heart, to strengthen our heart, to make our heart sound. Why? Because once the mind understands what's right and wrong and what's good and bad, it requires a purified, sound, strong heart to implement. It's not enough to know. Why do we struggle with sins? Some people find it easy to overcome and avoid and stay away from sins. Those who are trained, those who have struggled, those who have knowledge, those who have practice, those who have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will say generally they have better iman, stronger iman. Why is that? Because they have better, more purified, sounder hearts. This is why they can do that. When the heart is corrupt, you can read the Qur'an, you can hear a lecture, but you won't be able to stop yourself from committing sins. You won't be able to implement what you hear if your heart is not sound. And that's the problem. So Islam's major goal is to purify that heart. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an that nothing will benefit us on the Day of Judgment except for the person who comes with qalbin salim, except for the person who comes with a sound heart, with a purified heart, with a healthy heart. And the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, in the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is good and sound and clean and pure, then the whole body is pure, or whole body is good. If it is corrupted, then the whole body is corrupted. Everything we see in the world today, corruption, injustice, tyranny, people killing each other, people exploiting each other, people conquering each other's lands and taking property, etc., the bloodshed, everything we see emanates from the actions of man. And every action of man emanates from the heart. And that's what Islam comes to fix. Purification of the heart, which then obviously manifests in external realities about how you act, and about how you act as individuals, and then how you act as societies, how you construct the society, how you build the society, how you run the society. This is all manifested from actions that are stemming from the heart, with the guidance of the Qur'an from Islam. So this is the aim of Islam. Without that pure heart, without that strong heart, these three things that shaitan constantly commands us to do, su' wal fahsha, and to speak on behalf of Allah without knowledge, you will not be able to prevent these things without the sound heart. This is the way. And inshallah, the month of Ramadan is coming, and one of the key things in the month of Ramadan, again, why this 1 month long training? It's a 1 month long training. Again, the emphasis is on self-control, self-restraint, to use our minds to control our behavior. Shaitan is locked up. To make it even easier, he's chained up in the month of Ramadan. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us that opportunity to fulfill another way of fulfilling one of the major goals of Islam, which is that control, sound heart, which will control our actions and make our actions sound. So the month of Ramadan is coming, and inshallah, next week I'm not here. There'll probably be another talk. But the following week onwards, the discussions inshallah will be on Ramadan and some of the aspects of Ramadan. So just to summarize, we just covered verse 169, and we covered the ways in which shaitan, Allah describes it as commands, but he actually whispers, he tricks, he beautifies every evil and shameful deed and action and speech. And ultimately he wants you to say things, speak on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on things that you have no knowledge of. And the only thing that can protect us and prevent us from following his footsteps is a sound heart. We can understand he's dangerous, the enemy is dangerous. We can understand that. We can understand these things are haram. But we can't control ourselves and our limbs from acting out unless we have that firm, sound heart, a purified heart. And that is the goal and aim of Islam and all its practices, to produce this upright, moral, strong human being. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, inshallah.